Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for another podcast of Connect, Elder to Elders. Today, we explore E for evangelism in the local church.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the E2 Effective Elders podcast. Visit us at e2elders.org and please share this good word with others.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for another podcast from E2 Effective Elders. We call this Connect, Elder to Elder Conversations, and our thanks to CDF Capital for making this podcast possible. They are a longtime partner with E2 Effective Elders, and they invest in elders across the country and literally around the world. Today, we welcome Dr. Billy Strother. Billy is not only a good brother and friend of mine, he was a professor of mine back in the day, a New Testament prof. And today, Billy is serving as the Dean of Graduate Studies at Central Christian College of the Bible in Moberly, Missouri. He's also professor of preaching and New Testament. Dr. Billy, welcome.
Thank you for having me on today.
Well, it's a blessing. You know, I'm grateful that you moved from the deep South back here to the Midwest so that our paths can cross all the more frequently, especially now that you're a part of E2's coaching bench.
And I'm grateful to be a part of that ministry, which I've prayed for and utilized the materials. It's just an honor to serve in this way.
You've been a big champion of E2. You've introduced E2 to many churches, for which we're grateful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And today, Billy's going to help us. If you happen to be listening or watching, you know, we keep talking about in 2021, the 6 challenges facing elders. And we even take the word elders and use it as an acronym. And that first E is for the word evangelism. The local church across America is struggling with regard to bringing people to a saving knowledge of Christ. So, Dr. Billy, imagine yourself sitting in a coffee shop, and let's say at the table you got a couple, 3, 4 elders there with you, and sharing faith with unbelievers comes into conversation. What would you want to talk about with those elders at that table?
First, I love elders, and I've loved having relationships and training and coaching, and to be coached by them as well. But often they're at a disadvantage because maybe little has been poured into them, especially in the area of evangelism. Now, when I was 25 years old, the day after I graduated Bible college, I became the senior pastor of one little desperate church in Louisville, Kentucky. And I remember it vividly. The church was 75 years old. The church had 75 in average attendance, and the church's average age was, you want to guess what it was?
75.
75. So in the first elders meetings, the elders, the 3 elders and I, they pulled up this device that I'd never seen before. Now, when I was in high school, I was a projectionist in our little local town theater.
Okay.
So they pulled up this device that looked like something that you would snip film and paste it back together when it broke. Then they brought out these little rolls. I said, "What are those?" They said, "Those are Jules Miller's film strips."
You mean a film strip projector?
Yes. And I said, "What do I do with this?" They said, "Oh, yeah, it's all about evangelism. You take this into people's homes and you show them the film strips, and then they become Christians." It's been going on for 25 years. And this was 1984 is what this was. Oh, my
goodness.
Now, in defense of the Jules Miller's film strip, they really did lead a lot of people to Christ.
Of course,
back in the
absolutely.
day.
Back in the day.
And I did a little research, find out they're still available on DVD now as well. But, you know, we're not living in the Jules Miller age now. When we talk about evangelism, there's really kind of 3 approaches. And we as elders and leaders really need to embrace what's healthy. Number 1, the most often method of evangelism is what I call laissez-faire. In one church I served, when I got there and I said, "Hey, you know, what are we going to do about leading people to Jesus?" And they said, "Well, we got a church sign so they can see they can come in." And that was it. That was the sum total. And then secondly is attractional. through worship and ministries and programmings to bring them in. And the third one is relational. And then in relational, you go outside and you build those friendships, those relations. Too many churches say, well, you have to choose between attractional, relational. When you don't, it's a both and world. It's a false dichotomy to choose one or the other.
Yeah. It's all about the local church having that outward focus. And, I'm confident that you and Miss Carol, for those listening, Miss Carol is Billy's wife, that you have friendships with people who are not believers, so that you can hopefully, through a friendship, introduce Jesus to them.
Well, when I talk to elders, I say, we spend so much time, especially if you're a preaching elder, spend so much time with religious people. You got to fight. You have to fight for time to be around people who don't know Jesus yet, and to have that relationship and the impact. So there's no one way to do it, but it's not going to happen by accident. It's not going to fit in your schedule. You have to grasp it with your heart and invest time in those relationships. And so we've moved here to Clark, Missouri. We live 6 miles outside of a town of 100. So there's a local one. There's only one store in the whole town. So go in. There's a restaurant there, a mom and pop restaurant, and so just start building relationships there. There's a guy with a local speed shop in the next town over of about 150 people. Spend time with them. None of them are Christians, and we just have great joy. So you have to fight for it, and it's not going to happen naturally or by accident. But then you have to have a tool to go with that.
Yeah. Okay.
So what do you use? What do you have? Well, I don't recommend the Jules film strips. My first church, I put them through the ringer. I didn't know what I was doing, so I said, you know what? We need evangelism class. 13 weeks, an hour every Wednesday night, or you can't go calling for the church. So I put them through that. And then somewhere in my second ministry, I realized there's only one great tool, and it was used by Jesus. 90% of the 4 Gospels are in story. And so we have as our best tool, as elders, as Christians, as leaders, as volunteers, as just in Christ, we have stories. And there are 3 kinds of stories. And the stories, Jesus stories, give people hope, and they help them see that there's something bigger than they are, or there's a way to handle their struggles. And those stories are biblical stories, Jesus encounters. We know they're true stories. We believe the Bible, but they're people stories. And Jesus is reaching to people. Secondly, is the story of other Christians. Too often we don't celebrate the stories of redemption and hope and help and healing in our own congregations. Of course, we get permission to use those. And then the third thing, and I think the most ready and powerful one, is your own Jesus encounter story. Now, I'm not talking about your testimony, traditional testimony.
I was in the gutter.
There I was, a Chunkendale pole dancer. God is in the mundane, the details of life and struggle and joy. And every one of us has differing stories beyond our conversion, how Jesus helped us. And that's what people need. They need to hear that there's hope and there's help. And you tell them your Jesus story. And in that story, you always make Jesus the star, not yourself as well.
And what you're speaking of, the first one about people who are far from God, that we have to have a relationship, a friendship with them, and then earn the privilege of sharing our story.
Absolutely.
And that might be, we invite them over, their feet under our table, a cookout, a barbecue, whatever. But the power of having people in our homes, in our lives. I think even Leah and I, we keep trying to reach particular neighbors after all these years. And it's the investment of time. Sometimes it takes years before we're going to see the privilege of sharing verbally Jesus with them.
Absolutely. I want to talk briefly also now for leaders about the target. So many of us, when we talk about evangelism, I don't mean discipleship. That comes after evangelism. I'm talking about helping people who don't have a relationship with Jesus commencing that relationship. The National Association of Evangelicals did a survey 6 years ago in 2015. And the question was asked, at what age in America do people become Christians? And the results of that survey are not complicated. Now, we aren't pedo Baptists. We don't baptize babies or the unknowing. But in the National Evangelical Survey, it said that 1% of all people become Christians between 0 and 1. That doesn't apply to our, I'm not sure how, I think babies sometimes act out and need to repent, but I'm just not sure that they're capable of it. But 63% of people become Christians between the ages of 4 and 14. 63%. 34% of people who become Christians do it between the ages of 15 and 29. So if a person's not a Christian by the age of 29, there's only ever a 2% chance they will ever become a Christian.
Yeah. Have you given thought as to why that is?
I just think that our hearts become harder over the course of life, that bad things happen and bitterness comes in, or we don't fit God into our lives or even open our hearts beyond 30 unless some kind of transition tragedy or something happens as well. And sometimes that can be somebody's powerful sermon when you're visiting on Easter, but it's just harder. I mean, it's just the fact, only 2%.
I think that the older a person becomes, their worldview becomes all the more fixed. And I'm 49, haven't needed your Jesus. I'm 49, don't need him today, didn't need him yesterday. And I've many times thought in my mind, it's like having, if I had my back against a power pole, and every time you shared Jesus with me, or every time I had been invited to church or whatever, and I said, thanks, but no thanks, talk to the hand, rap would go a sewing thread, just once, a sewing thread. Now, early on, I could break that thread, but every time I say no, as time passes, rap goes a thread, rap goes a thread. And the older I get, the harder it would be for me to break free and to come to Christ. I read someplace some years ago that one person after age 70, 1% out of 700,000, one person out of 700,000 after the age of 70 comes to Christ because of their worldview becoming all the more solidified. So your statistic, age 29 and older, the rarity of somebody coming to Christ is all the more likely.
And so that leaves us with elders as a task. You know, we know what the tools are. We know what the target should be. I mean, if we want to maximize our fruitfulness, then we have to focus on children and young adult ministry.
Right.
That's where 97% of people who ever become Christians do. Now, that doesn't mean we write off senior adults. I mean, oh my gosh, I've had the joy of baptizing a number of those over the years with stories, crazy stories. But if we as elders are responsible for the expenditure of people and resources in a strategic manner, then one of the most important things we can do is say, well, what can we devote to children's ministry? Now, here's why I say children's ministry rather than children and just young adult. Children's ministry, because I don't know if you've noticed, but parents, and especially us grandparents, we follow our children.
Yes.
So if we're visiting a church for the first time, say you have a guest, first time visit, mom, dad, 2.5 kids, whatever the average is now. And the kids go to the children's ministry part and the parents go to the worship part. Well, then they meet right back up at the door of the children's ministry. And the first question the parents ask is, did you like it? It isn't, what was the theological premise of today's children? You know, did you like it? And if the kid says no, Well, now you've lost the parents.
Right.
And the possibility to impact the kids. And so to me, there's nothing more vital, yet we don't think in that category of the importance of that, because you get the kids, you get their parents, you get their grandparents. And listen, 5% of all children are being raised by a grandparent.
Yes.
So with your experiences on the importance of children, how have you valued that over time?
Well, I think that, you being a professor of New Testament studies, let's just go to the New Testament when Paul commends Timothy and he says how the faith first lived in your grandmother Lois, then in your mother Eunice, now I am persuaded lives in you also. So here we have generational faith being a part of a family. And as a dad and as a grandpa, I see nothing more important than making sure that those in my immediate family hear the good news of Jesus and exercise their free will, and the good Lord willing, they come to Christ, and then I disciple them in the faith. So I am shouting, amen, preach it, buddy. We've got to invest time, energy, and effort in the local church as elders when it comes to the next generation. When you made mention of, those kids, they've got parents or grandparents who bring them. Hopefully, the churches that are listening right now or watching this podcast are churches with 5 living generations, that we've got Gen Z, we have millennials, we've got Generation X, we have boomers, and we've got the builders. Hopefully, there will be 5 living generations from youngest to oldest. And what we want to do is integrate them, not just have multi-generational ministry. We want intergenerational ministry. And we who are older, making sure that we are doing all that we can to capture that generation. As you said, the likelihood of somebody coming to Christ is going to happen by age 15. And if we can do that and then begin discipling them in the faith, I think that we're going to see a big change happen in the local church.
Yeah, and we can finally talk about task here. We're not talking about children's ministry that's just around attitude and piano and you take communion for the baptized ones let's start children's ministry. Where are those dead puppets? Oh, they're in the dry baptistry. Let's drag them back out. No, we're talking about doing worship for children and ministry for children on Sunday morning in sympathy with the rhythm of life of parents and grandparents, and having energetic, meaningful worship with them. Now, the smaller churches really are kind of an advantage. A large church has a lot of resources, and often they'll really do a great job at targeting children. But rural churches or small churches have some real advantages as well in flexibility. For example, I've been preaching at this church on and off, just love it. It's a church of about 100 here in Missouri. And the babies through the grandparents, small children, the teens sit on front, they're all in worship together. And so they're talking to me, how can we grow? I said, well, do any of the churches in the area have children's ministry? No, nobody's got that. I said, well, why don't you think about a fun, energetic children's worship on Sunday morning? And they go, oh, why would we do that? I said, because you'd be the only church, most of the county, doing that. And the young families, not only will be ministered to, then their friends are going to want to come. They go, oh, we never thought about that. So if I was in an established church that was plateaued, that was smaller, or I was planting a new church, after I hired the senior leadership, a pastor or a preacher, my next hire would be at least a part-time children's minister. Otherwise, I'm not allocating resources. So the final question for elders is, for all of us, is always be asking, if 4 to 14 and 15 to 29 are the sweet spots where people are most open to Jesus. And we know their parents and their grandparents will follow them. What are we doing? What are our resources we're allocating to that? I think sometimes we flip things wrong. Yes, student ministry is critical, especially since before they go to college. But the critical key is let's start with children and do that right.
Yeah. George Barna, some years ago, wrote a book called Transforming Children into Spiritual Champions. And then he edited that book, updated some of the statistics in it, and it came out under a new title called Revolutionary Parenting. And it's really exceptional. It just speaks to everything that you are saying today about the need to reach deliberately, intentionally into the lives of those who are young with the hope of Jesus. Yep.
Well, as long as we strategically, as elders say, how do we use this extraordinary tool of storytelling? How do we do it outside and inside the walls? How do we form a ministry that targets those who are hearts are most open, the demographics are most open, and then let's make a commitment of our resources to do something important in that area as well. I think small churches, middle-sized churches, large churches, and then even mega churches, all of us can benefit by reanalyzing how we're allocating resources.
Well, I can appreciate the homiletic thinking of my professor, Dr. Billy Strother. I can remember having you in seminary for preaching and teaching the resurrection narratives class. And what you just shared, I hear the word tools. I hear the word target. I hear the word task. Sounds like a 3-point challenge to me from a great preacher. So,
well, the key is we baby boomers. I'm a baby boomer. We lost a generation, and many of them are our own children. But I'm going to make sure that my grandchildren are going to know Jesus, no matter what it costs me. And it's going to take us senior adults and older adults. And here's why: the young families got no money. And resources is going to come from a commitment from our hearts to stop being as selfish as we are and say, let's get this done. Let's fund this.
You bet. Well, brother, you're a blessing to us. And I am so grateful that you are in the classroom. You are shaping the next generation of church leaders. You have always been the consummate educator, mentor of many, myself included.
Well, it was always nice having you in the classroom when I was a 12-year-old grad professor, because you were so smart. When I didn't know the answer to something, I'd say, student asked a question in the grad class, and I'd say, that's so simple to answer. We're going to let Gary Johnson answer that for us. And then I'd learn what the answer should be. Thank you for all those great answers.
Yeah, we had a good time, and we still keep having a good time. All right, well, you have a powerful day, buddy.
Thank you, bro. God bless you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.